Imagine a kingdom that ruled Europe, culturally, militarily, and politically, a realm where French was the language of kings. Versailles dazzled the world, and one man's will reshaped an entire continent. Then picture that same power crumbling into revolution. Terror, endless war, and repeated upheaval. How did France, the undisputed master of the Ancien Régime, fall so dramatically and rise as something entirely new? This is the gripping story of France's transformation from absolute monarchy to the modern nation, a tale of brilliance, hubris, blood, and enduring ideals that still shape our world today. It begins in the early 18th century, under the long shadow of Louis XIV, the Sun King. His 72-year reign, the longest of any major European monarch, was legendary. Through iron will and ruthless centralization, he tamed the fractious nobility, stripped regional powers, and built a formidable state machine. Versailles wasn't just a palace, it was a gilded cage that kept the aristocracy dancing attendance while the king pulled every string. French culture became Europe's gold standard. French fashion, art, theater, and language were imitated from Madrid to St. Petersburg. France stood as the continent's superpower, but even the sun sets. Louis XIV's endless wars and lavish court left France groaning, under crushing debt and heavy taxes. When he died in 1715, the crown passed to his 5-year-old great-grandson, Louis XV. For decades, regents and relatives steered the ship while the boy king enjoyed the fruits of his ancestors' golden age. France still sparkled outwardly: grand buildings, artistic patronage, cultural dominance. Yet inside, stagnation crept in. Louis XV made few bold reforms. The tax burden stayed crushing for the poor while the privileged escaped. Financial scandals eroded trust. The shy, indecisive king failed to modernize the state or heal, deepening social divides. Worse was coming: the 7 Years' War. A global clash that spilled from Europe into North America and India ended in humiliation. France, fighting Britain and Prussia, lost almost its entire North American empire, Canada, and huge swaths of Louisiana territory. Strategic trade networks collapsed. National prestige was shattered. The treasury, already strained, was bled white. Louis XV died in 1774, handing his grandson Louis XVI, a kingdom teetering on the edge, bankrupt, resentful, and primed for explosion. While the court partied, a new intellectual storm was brewing. The Enlightenment. In Paris, salons and cafes, thinkers like Voltaire, Rousseau, and Montesquieu championed reason over tradition, liberty over divine right rule, and equality over feudal privilege. Books and pamphlets spread like wildfire. The old certainties, God-given monarchy, noble birthrights were openly questioned. The monarchy itself had once flirted with these ideas, but now they threatened its very foundation. Louis XVI tried to fix the mess. Capable ministers like Turgot, Necker, and Calonne attempted spending cuts, fairer taxes, and shifting the burden onto the privileged. Court resistance, noble backlash, and the king's own hesitation doomed the efforts. France's glamorous support for the American Revolution, sweet revenge against Britain, only deepened the debt crisis. By the late 1780s, bad harvests, soaring bread prices, and urban riots made the situation explosive. France was a powder keg with a lit fuse. In 1789, desperate Louis XVI summoned the Estates General for the first time since 1614, hoping for unity. It backfired catastrophically. The Third Estate, the commoners, broke away, declared themselves the National Assembly, and demanded a new order. On July 14th, Parisian crowds stormed the Bastille fortress. The Great Fear swept the countryside. On the night of August 4th, feudal privileges were swept away in one dramatic session. Weeks later, the Assembly issued the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen, a thunderous document proclaiming liberty, equality, property, and popular sovereignty. The old world was dying. At first, moderates tried a constitutional monarchy, with Louis XVI still on the throne. But distrust boiled over. In 1792, Radicals abolished monarchy and proclaimed the First Republic. Louis XVI was tried and guillotined in January 1793. Then came the Reign of Terror. The Committee of Public Safety, led by Robespierre, executed around 17,000. Enemies of the revolution, thousands more died in prisons. Chaos and war with most of Europe consumed the young republic. By 1795, the more moderate Directory took over, but corruption and instability remained. France needed a strong hand. That hand belonged to a brilliant young Corsican artillery officer named Napoleon Bonaparte, victorious in Italy, a hero. After crushing royalist rebels in Paris with cannon fire, Napoleon seized power in the November 1799 coup d'etat. He established the consulate. Then in 1804, crowned himself Emperor Napoleon I in Notre Cathedral. Pas revolutionary merit. Pas monarchical spectacle. Napoleon didn't just rule. He transformed France. He appointed loyal prefects to run departments directly from Paris, crushing local noble power once and for all. The Napoleonic Code standardized laws across the land, enshrined equality before the law, protected private property, and buried feudalism forever. Education was centralized and the Concordat with the Pope healed the bitter church-state rift. Taxes were rationalized, infrastructure boomed, and the Bank of France stabilized finances. Napoleon created a modern, efficient, centralized state, even as he grew more autocratic. Yet Europe refused to accept a revolutionary emperor. On its doorstep, the Napoleonic Wars 1803 to 1815 consumed his reign. Napoleon shattered coalition after coalition. His masterpiece, at Austerlitz in 1805, crushed Austria and Russia. He redrew Europe's map, installed family members as kings, and tried to strangle Britain with the continental system. But Spain's Peninsular War turned into a bloody guerrilla quagmire. The fatal mistake came in 1812. The invasion of Russia. 600,000 men marched east. Bitter cold, scorched earth. An endless retreat destroyed the Grand Army. Only a fraction returned. Allied coalitions closed in. Napoleon fought brilliantly in 1813 to 1814, but Paris fell. He abdicated and was exiled to Elba. His dramatic 100 Days return ended forever at war. In June 1815, defeated, he died in lonely exile on St. Helena. Yet his legal and administrative reforms outlived him. The Bourbons returned in 1814 to 1815 under Louis XVIII, but not as absolute monarch. A constitutional charter kept many revolutionary gains. Still, Charles X's reactionary policies sparked the July Revolution of 1830. The citizen King Louis Philippe of the Orleans branch took the throne, representing the rising middle class. He modernized quietly, favored businessmen over courtiers, and flew the tricolor instead of the white Bourbon flag. Yet he ignored the growing working class. By 1848, revolution swept Europe again. Le Philippe fell. The Second Republic was born amid high hopes for liberty and rights. Louis Napoleon Bonaparte, Napoleon's nephew, won the presidency as an anti-establishment outsider. Tends to get 1851 coup to become Emperor Napoleon III. His second empire delivered to decades of dazzling growth. Railways, banks, industry, grand boulevards and parties and colonial expansion. But authoritarianism, press censorship, and disastrous foreign policy, especially the 1870 Franco-Prussian War, brought it crashing down. Napoleon III was captured, the empire collapsed, and the Third Republic was proclaimed. Despite monarchist Republican, the Third Republic endured as France's longest post-revolution regime. Centralization continued. Industry accelerated. The middle class grew. Colonial empires expanded dramatically in Africa and Indochina. The late 19th and early 20th centuries, Tabaye, brought prosperity, technological marvels, and cultural brilliance. France had modernized not through one clean break, but through decades of blood, fire, and repeated rebirth. The old order of divine right kings and feudal privilege was gone forever. In its place, stood the principles of 1789: liberty, equality, popular sovereignty, enshrined in law, embedded in institutions, and defended through every upheaval. France paid an enormous price in lives and turmoil, but those convulsions forged the modern nation we recognize today: centralized, secular-leaning, merit-based, and proudly Republican at heart. That's how a seemingly invincible kingdom fell so spectacularly, and how, from the ashes, modern France was born. Next time, we follow France from the trenches of the First World War, through occupation, decolonization, and its role in today's Europe. The story is far from over. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of history's greatest transformations, hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment. Which chapter of French history fascinates you most? The Sun King, the Revolution, or Napoleon? See you in the next episode.